Day 21 of the Ukraine invasion. This was Kiev this morning. Look at these pictures. Another residential complex was bombed. Ukraine's capital is now a clear target of Russian forces. At least 4 multi-story buildings have been destroyed. Scores of people have died. Across Ukraine, Russia is intensifying aerial attacks. The focus is no more on just taking cities. The Russians seem to be prepared to destroy cities if needed. Why the sudden escalation? Perhaps to build pressure in talks. Ukraine's president says there is room for compromise. Is Moscow trying to squeeze more concessions from Kiev by bombing Ukraine? What will be the terms of this truce? And will Ukraine agree to Russia's demands? On Gravitas tonight, we'll discuss all of this and more. First to the battleground, where fighting continues in major cities. Russia has changed tactics. They're picking Ukrainian targets and firing missiles at them. Ukraine says civilians are being struck and that 2/3 of Russian rockets have hit civilian establishments. Of course, Russia denies all these charges. Their president, Vladimir Putin, has justified the actions of his forces. This is what he said.
In terms of the military tactics developed by the Russian Ministry of Defense and the General Staff, they have been completely justified. And our lads, soldiers and officers have shown bravery and heroism. And they are doing everything that they can to avoid loss of civilian life in Ukrainian cities.
War and the war coverage. Now, you know, Brian Stelter is fantastic over at the CNN. The reason why he was chose to do that job is because he's incurious and repeats propaganda. So the past 24 hours are a reminder. This was from February 24th. That's right when the war started in Ukraine. He says the past 24 hours are a reminder that consumers in an era of YouTube and TikTok still gravitate to trusted established news outlets during emergencies. They know where to go, so to speak. Oh, you guys might want to go get your news on when there isn't a war. and television coverage is essential, he says. Let's go look at some of their essential coverage of the Syrian gas attacks that turned out to be a hoax that they confirmed. Here's how they confirmed it.
And there's definitely something that stings. That's how.
Yes, there's definitely. Hey, I think there is a chemical weapon attack. Can you confirm it? Yes, definitely something. Yes, because that's how you would confirm a chemical weapons attack. You would start sniffing the chemical that's deadly.
That's brave of her to sniff that scarf, that chemical scarf.
She's got guts.
It can cause permanent damage to do that.
Here's some more essential television coverage of war. Remember this?
I'm guided by the beauty of our weapons, and they are beautiful pictures of fearsome armaments making what is for them a brief flight over to this airfield. What did they hit? What are you convinced?
What did they? Oh, they're so beautiful. I'm guided by the beauty of them. What did they kill? What did those things kill? They're so beautiful.
That Enola Gay plane is so beautiful. What are that beautiful fat man and little boy? Where did they go?
Where did they go?
Whatever happened with those? I remember they got shot off, and then I started watching something else.
So this guy says about Brian Stelter, Brian is jerking off in the mirror.
Media personalities who live off-grid? I'm often told that we, the people, cannot be told the full truth about climate change. If the populace were actually informed, the story goes, chaos would result. That's why politicians and media personalities, who have been working hand in hand for many decades, will not reveal the whole stinking story to the plebes. Wait, what? That makes no sense. If the so-called powers that be really believe people will go bananas when they are informed about the truth, can you imagine how people will act when they actually find out they've been lied to?
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said he sees some hope for a compromise. Zelensky said Tuesday he doesn't expect Ukraine to join NATO anytime soon. Later today, the Ukrainian leader is virtually addressing the U.S. Congress, where he's expected to repeat calls for more military reinforcement and a no-fly zone. Meanwhile, the Russian TV producer, Marina Oshanikova, was released Tuesday after being fined for calling on Russians to join anti-war protests in a pre-recorded video. On Monday, she burst onto the set of a live Russian news broadcast yelling, "Stop the war," while holding a sign that said, "They're lying to you here." Russia withdrew from the Council of Europe Tuesday ahead of its expected expulsion from Europe's rights watchdog. Amid its increasing isolation, Moscow also announced sanctions against President Biden and top U.S. officials, as well as Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau. This came as the European Union approved a new wave of sanctions against Russia, including banning investments in Russian energy, luxury goods, exports and imports of steel products. The UK also blacklisted hundreds of powerful Russians and imposed new import tariffs. Meanwhile, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg warned Moscow could stage a false flag operation in Ukraine to launch a chemical weapons attack. President Biden signed a bill Tuesday which includes $13.6 billion in additional military and humanitarian aid for Ukraine. It's part of a $1.5 trillion spending measure to fund the U.S. government through the 2022 fiscal year. The measure, however, was stripped of funding for the pandemic after Democrats could not agree on where that money would come from.
Well, Adam, he also made a statement that was akin to saying that they need to safeguard all of the nuclear facilities in Ukraine, and then announced that they were sending money in. But I think what we need to think about is what the UN could or couldn't do. And if the UN wants to take it a step further after going off of this initiative of saying we should secure the facilities, if they, let's say they decide to roll in UN peacekeepers in to do that, what would that do? What kind of escalation would that create for the conflict that's going on there between Russia and Ukraine?
We have, so check this out. Putin versus Ukraine. New weapons target your electronics, not you. Putin's recent warning about consequences that you have never experienced could refer to EMPs that target the computer-based systems that keep us all alive today. That was a quote. On February 24th, Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered his military strike tries to interfere with us, and even more so, such consequences of events and all necessary decisions in this regard have already been made. It says this warning has widely been viewed as a threat to employ nuclear weapons in response to interference with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But what kind of nukes did Putin have in mind? Tactical nukes could destroy European cities. ICBMs launched against the U.S. would kill millions, and the U.S. would retaliate in kind. With these nukes are highly destructive booms that leave behind dangerous levels of radioactivity. Russia, China, and NK and the U.S. have developed nukes that are not designed to cause physical damage. Instead, these booms are designed to be detonated high in the sky, where they generate a powerful electromagnetic pulse that can disable power plants and electric devices across many hundreds of miles. The U.S. military has studied the effects of EMP for many years. It says, when I was working on a top-secret laser projects at the Air Force Weapons Lab from 1970 to 72, the lab next door was heavily involved in research on how to better understand and prevent EMP damage to Air Force aircraft. They took their work very seriously, especially when they tested the EMP vulnerability of combat aircraft. Because the world situation has become much more dangerous in recent years, especially following the disastrous departure from Afghanistan, interested in what might occur in the U.S. if they were to be struck by one or more EMP weapons. Now, it says, I was especially concerned about Sequin, Texas, the nearby city from which we purchase electricity and water. I sent open records requests to the city asking for their contingency plans should there be major or potentially long-lasting disruption in electrical power caused by an EMP of an enemy attack or solar event. The plans to provide water and sewage disposal, plans to provide law enforcement, fire protection, hospital service, and other services, plans to assure equitable availability of food to all citizens. And guess what? The city's response was a blank page. So I wrote attorney Andy Quittner. He explained that there were no few backup generators. I requested plans for an EMP. There are Black Start was our plan. The official federal plan of what we would do after they destroyed our grid. They totally wiped it out. They knocked out 9 different locations around the country, and literally they found that you could knock out just 9 locations and put us out for anywhere from 12 months to 24 months, 1 to 2 years, or 6 months at the low end, right? So 6 months to 12 to 18 months to 24 months without power. And what they did is that plan would consist of, okay, everything is down. Where are we going to go get our supplies from? Where are we going to then go try to fix first? What are we going to turn on? What is protected? Where do we get our stuff? Well, in Solar Winds, whoever did that hack, whether it be Russia, which, if going by what's going on right now, if it was China, whoever it was, they now have access to that. So the second that an EMP hits the United States, we go into Black Start, which took years and years to design because this is a global or a nationwide plan. They would know where to destroy to keep that plan from going in place. So I'm sure after that got hacked just a few months ago that they probably started plan and things like that. They would have to change the entire plan, and they would have to totally rotate it. And even if they did, to come up with a fresh new way to do it would take years. Even if they did get a brand new plan, they would have a pattern of what we would do and how we would actually make that plan, so they would be better able to guess how we would end up protecting or trying to get it back up. Now, what it's saying though is this is just like when I went to Ocean Shores. I had been on that force for 2.5 years, including the snow contingents. Just an example. An EMP or something like this happens out to you for so long. There's no real people that know about it, and if there is, it's in the very top few.
Think about it for more than 3 seconds and you'll realize this makes no sense. The potential trade-off here is full knowledge now or full knowledge later. The reward, according to the story I hear every day, is another reasonably calm day for the sociopaths pulling the strings of empire. If you, or more importantly, the sociopaths pulling the strings of empire, believe knowledge leads to immediate chaos, then information must be withheld as long as possible. But what if it works differently? What if, as I imagine, people appreciate having access to information? All of it. What if people will come to appreciate every day alive once they understand how fragile the situation actually is for humans on Earth?
Please imagine with me that the best case scenario described by Harvard professor James Anderson and Jennifer McKinnon of the Scripps Institution and also at the University of California, San Diego turns into reality. Under this scenario, the first ice-free Arctic Ocean in the history of civilization will be upon us in late September of next year, 2023. Full impacts, including a rate of environmental change too rapid for humans and other species to adapt, would be realized the following year, 2024. What if, with full knowledge regarding loss of habitat for our species on Earth, the end of our species plays out like Ray Bradbury's 1951 short story, The Last Night of the World? In Bradbury's short story, which you can find online, acceptance was the prevailing attitude during literally the last night of the world for humans. Nobody jumped on a plane to fly west, and therefore extend their lives by a few hours. Sadness was experienced as people kissed their loved ones, said goodnight, and went to sleep. They actually accepted their near-term deaths and acted accordingly. They did not lie, not to themselves and not to others. I have been promoting accepting the evidence, including the fact that all living organisms die, for many years. This message is contrary to the prevailing narrative in our culture, the message that death is for other people. On the other hand, I am certain death will greet us all, and soon. After all, we are losing habitat for Homo sapiens throughout the world.